Oh, that's good. That's all right. So cosmogony is the branch of science that deals with the origin of the universe. So this will be a very quick zoom through from the beginnings, beyond the universe, the beginnings of the universe, to our present day. So here we go. Cosmogony. Basically, it means, where does everything come from? And the answer isn't Amazon. It's important because we got this universe, we know it's there, but what was there at the start? Now, for decades, probably, the basic proposition was that everything comes from a singularity, a point of infinite density, infinitesimal volume, from which expands everything else. And if you asked what was before that, they would say that is a nonsense question because space and time begin at that point. And that was the philosophical, metaphysical way of dealing with origins. Now, things have changed. And part of the reason it's changed is looking at what's happening at that early stage. What's governing these starting conditions? How come there is the fine-tuning of parameters and ratios and particular constants, which seem to be absolutely essential to the way that the universe expands and manifests? So we're starting to explore in cosmology ideas from beyond the beginning of this universe. A standard one is the Big Bounce, the idea that all the information and material from the previous universe collapses down into almost a singularity and bounces back up into this universe. And then there's others. This is Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology. That little picture there was when our group, the SPI in UK, invited Penrose and Hameroff to attend an event. Hameroff was speaking. We spent the whole afternoon with the two of them and then went for pizza. And on the way, dropped in at the Department of Mathematics to see Penrose's tiling, which is that's another story. But anyway, on the way up to the restaurant, he was explaining cyclic cosmology to me. I didn't get it. I think I was intent on the forthcoming meal. But anyway, it goes something like this, that you have a universe that is constantly expanding in space and information and becoming more and more diluted until it reaches this point where information is practically in an unmanifest state. But that conforms to the state it might be if it was just at that kind of almost singularity point, and then spreads out again, and then does it again and again and again and again. I'm just showing these as illustrations, how people are trying to cope with what's before the universe. And the other one that's probably much more adopted by the public is the idea of the multiverse. And it's not the way it's presented in all the films and all those things. They're taking great advantage of what they could imagine with that. The multiverse is actually the concept that there must be some sort of sea of matter and information seething beyond this universe. And then out of it is popping universes here, there, and everywhere. And most of those universes come into a sort of formation and disappear because they don't have the information structure in order to specify a viable universe. So they just pop and die, pop and die. One of them managed to succeed. One of them got the constants and the ratios and the parameters right. It happens to be this one. We're very lucky, but the point is we wouldn't be able to say we were lucky unless we were here. So it's a kind of circular argument on that. But that's the multiverse. But what they're really kind of identifying in all of this is that there are certain ingredients necessary before this universe exists in order to create a successful universe. So what are those? Substance. And really, when we talk about substance, we're talking about energy. We like to think of the hard stuff, but actually, when physics looks at it, it's energy. But these days, they're not even willing to talk about just energy. It has to include information. For a physicist, this whole world is simply energy and information, manifesting properties, manifesting forms, manifesting things that our senses interact with. That's a very, very Vedantic point of view. And so the idea is that most people think that information emerges out of stuff. like this podium. We can say how big it is, that's information. We analyze it and say how heavy it is, information. What temperature it is, what color it is, information. So the general classical view, because of the way we experience the world, we think information comes from analyzing matter. It's the other way around. And when you get down to the deep physics, you start to parallel the way Vedanta and Sankhya analyze matter, is that information comes before structure. Information defines what structure will be, what properties will emerge. So substance and information both required as ingredients for a successful universe. But you need something more, because unless substance and information have the ability to mix and actually generate change in substance on the basis of information, and information has a chance to change and introduce new change to matter, unless there is a mixing element, then nothing can happen. Everything is totally static. So these gives us a few kind of pre-cosmic principles. And I'm going to kind of parallel those substance, energy, information, and mixing with some of the concepts that we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, particularly second and third canto. And Bhagavatam talks about different energy substance. And it gives three important phrases for our words for the state of matter before any universe manifests. So this is all pre-cosmic. Pradhana, Mahatattva, and Prakriti. Often in the Bhagavatam, they seem to be mixed around and given different meanings and things like that. So it's something that we'll have to look at very closely. I'm not trying to give a precise definition and application of them, but I'm going to sort of use them in a way that I understand that progression and the difference in how these terms are being used. They together are the material cause. That's the material stuff to work with, but that's not enough. You need information. And we'll discuss what the Gunas and how they play their role as an information medium. They carry specific information and help to manifest change and properties in matter. But where does that information come from? And that impetus of information is said to come from the jivas, karma, and destinies. And I'll explain that. Together, they form the efficient cause, the reason why things are happening in the way they do. And the mixing factor, this is kala, this is time. We can understand time in terms of how it affects us psychologically, the movement of time, but more importantly, is kala drives forward. That's what kala does. It drives forward the change in matter, the immediate agency. And together, the Bhagavatam says they generate products of pre-cosmic elements and pre-cosmic sensory templates. And of course, how is all this tied together? There is a remote cause, an absolute agency, the ultimate causal principle. We're looking at these immediate ones. Here's the material energy and information, pradhana and gunas. Initially, the Bhagavatam says the gunas, which are the specifying information, are in balance. Now, what do we mean by gunas? Here's a link with entropy. Rajas is an energy that creates formation, generates things. It reduces entropy. Tamas increases the entropy because it dissolves, it dilutes, it destroys. And sattva extends or sustains in an entropic state. So we can model them in this way, put them all together, like this. And at the beginning of any cyclic time, it seems that Rajas is most active and then decreases its influence. Tamas is least active, but then increases its influence over time. Sattva decides how long those things extend. So you have a little chart like that. Put them together and model the effect of Rajas over Tamas, and you see a line like this, from high entropy at the beginning going low and then back up again. The entropic state of disorder is being reduced and then allowing to come back high again. And what that means is that something can manifest for a period and then be dissolved. That's the Gunas. So early stages, entropy is practically absolute, information is zero. But it needs the injection of information. That seems to be something which you can almost say all this happens simultaneously. Kala allows the jiva's desires and karma and destiny stored, within Mahavishnu to become activated and to activate the Gunas. And that creates now what's called the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva is causal because it is charged with the information and impetus allowed by Kala's interaction with the Gunas and full of all the jiva's desires and things, but it is distributed evenly. But within that perturbation that you see now of the Gunas, things start to appear, and they are the elemental components and the sensory templates, and we'll talk about templates more in a few minutes. These things start to appear. They're not manifesting anything that we would recognize as physical or anything we could interact with or anything you could build with. They're templates. They're the components, pre-cosmic components, going to be available for generating a universe. But then the perturbation can increase. And basically what this is taking a group of those jiva's karma and concentrating just some of them into one area. And it's just concentrating this until its own little cloud starts to appear, in which it gathers the elemental components and the sensory templates into itself. And from that, the proto-physical elemental rings that were described for the universe yesterday in the film start to appear. And then within that, we find, within this perturbation, as it's getting more and more concentrated, we find a universe. Initially, dark, cold. It's the empty Brahmanda. But even then, within that, there's further concentration of information and perturbation. And from that starts to form this, if you like, globe, this blob. And this blob is actually the aggregate karma and destinies of all the jivas, all their desires, wrapped up in one little ball. That is what is called the cosmic intelligence. Prabhupada uses that particular phrase. This is the information right at the beginning of this universe. And this is what's going to specify its structure, its forms, its planetary systems, its different realms, its different dimensions, its different experience for every one of those jivas. And no one can count them. So then it's explained that this blob starts to manifest form. Head, eyes, things, all these legs, everything starts to appear. And the body of the Viratarupa becomes manifest. This is the same blob in one sense, but it is now taking its form. It's starting to manifest the properties that the universe will display. But initially it is inactive, the Bhagavatam says, even when completely formed. What is needed is Garbhodakshai Vishnu to enter into it and to activate it. Now, it is a body with a soul, and it becomes activated. And if you want to see what that looks like, that's what it would look like, because it contains every element, every species, every form that could ever be manifest within it. Oh, that's quite freaky. That's the Vishwarupa, because what we're talking about when we think about high entropy, it's not disorder, it's potential. It's potential that can be collapsed into many different forms, and that's what's on offer in the Vedic picture. So now this is starting to, the Viratarupa then manifests what is a cosmic information structure. What do we mean by information structure? Well, it's a bit like a mold. A mold is something where you pour water in, it takes a form, right? So a skeleton is an information structure, coding that produces a picture. It gathers the stuff together. This structural template is more than a map. It actually organizes stuff in order to produce something around it. So the structural template of the universe is formed, and through a process which I won't get into, it's connected with the paramanus and the kind of structural web that is described in the 8th canto. Then we have this kind of form start to appear, and we get the cosmos, and this picture is as we humans experience it. So really what you have in these last few minutes, let me just explain. You have the Viratarupa activated. You have an information structure that manifests from it, which is what we are reading and understanding in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam. As I say, more than a map, it brings together ways in which the universe can manifest realms for the experience of the jivas. So it gives us our experience of reality. And just as a way of understanding the distinctions between this, and I'm not trying to make any exact parallel, we can think the Viratarupa, yeah, it's a subtle body with the soul in it, okay? And what's around that? A skeletal structure. But I'm not suggesting the information, the Viratarupa, the 5th canto, is a skeleton as such, but it's an information template which does the same job, or a skeleton does the same job as that. And from that, you get go-gators, right? That's your experience of reality. You see this thing. Now, how do you relate that thing you've just seen to the skeleton? They're not the same thing. You can't measure the dimensions of our friend, the gator, and, you know, look at that and think, oh, they don't, there's a parallel, there's some correlation, but they're not the same thing. When you see the gator, you are not seeing the skeleton. This is the realm we experience. The 5th canto is not the realm we experience. And in fact, the 5th canto is very good at giving one realm of experience for us according to our status as humans with our conditioned senses, and another level for other beings. We don't see their realm. They don't, you know, they might be able to see ours, perhaps, if they're advanced or if they would like to. But we don't see their realm, neither do we see the information structure. And we should stop messing around and mixing those things up in our thinking. So these are the information structures that produce our experience of reality. You can think of it a bit like dreamscapes. How many of you dreamt last night, had dreams? How many of you can remember just a little bit of where you were, what you were doing, yeah? Right? Was it weird? Were you experiencing a completely different realm of reality? I don't experience your dreamscape. You don't experience mine. Don't think we all in this universe experience the same dreamscape of physical, what we call physical reality. We can measure our own physical reality. We can work with it. We can send our machines here, there, everywhere. We can do all of that. We're not exploring anyone else's manifested realm. That is the power of a template. It is not limited to one outcome. It can manifest many. And in order to connect us with the information structure, there's two things we can do. One is we can see parallels, and that is the work of many of the BI devotees, showing the correlation between how we do experience this and the information template as provided in the 5th canto. There are correlations, and very interesting ones. It's not fanciful. But at the same time, the 2nd canto, as the first step in realization, wants us to appreciate another connection, and that is see the human being in the gator. Don't just punch him. Don't just knock him over. Don't just make fun of him. There's a human being in there, right? Pay attention to the being and meditate that he has form in this little gentleman here, and that will help you appreciate that the information structure itself is an organism, because it is the gross body of the Viratarupa, the subtle body and the soul of Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And therefore, the Bhagavatam is giving us hints in the 2nd and 3rd canto about the Viratarupa, 5th canto about the information structure, and in the 2nd canto, how humans can meditate and make the gap between the two. And with that, thank you very much. Very good. Oh, questions. Okay.
We have, let's see, how about we get 5 minutes of questions? Anyone has any? I think that was a wonderful talk.
Thank you so much for that really fascinating talk. I was wondering if the good count is describing information structures that are at a, for lack of a better word, at a sub level or at a pre-cosmic level, then to what extent then are we mistaken in trying to map it to the physical, visible world, from your opinion?
Yeah, and I think the difficulty comes when we start to think, all right, there are certain things I think we can correlate, and I think those ones are quite clear. Others, we have to say, well, how is such a locus so many yojanas from Earth? That doesn't seem appropriate. Dimensions, time scales sometimes are not the way we will experience time. So I just think I'm asking for caution in, those who say, well, for instance, if they describe that there's heavenly planets on the moon, should I be able to see them? If you tell me you went to a heavenly planet in your dream, will I see it? I have no access to that. So I think we just have to be, I'm just asking for caution and an appreciation of the metaphysics and in the way something as an information structure can manifest various different realities. And the Bhagavatam is very good at telling us about those different realities we would never experience were they not telling us about them.
Thank you.
Information. So do our thoughts, things that we're thinking, do they put information out into the world to move things around? Like prayer, we were praying, we say Hare Krishna when somebody needs something. Is that changing in our universe?
Yes, because this universe is a facilitation of all our desires, all of us together, and it's dynamic. Because when we come into the universe, as soon as we start become manifest, as soon as we start become active within a body, we are generating new ideas, desires. We're feeding in to that cosmic intelligence that will be manifesting new forms of reality. So we're a small player, though. But if you've got a really nice prayer and you're really sincere about it, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, we'll do one more question.
Carlos.
Yeah.